Hi there, I'm Gavin Reilly, political correspondent at Virgin Media News. The good people at Meath County Library, who I should say were the hosts for the best summer job I ever had. My leaving cert summer of 2004, I worked in County Library in Navan and really, really enjoyed it. The team to Mark Ireland Reads have asked me to recommend 5 current affairs books, which I know all of which are available through your local library catalogues, but just to maybe prompt you into some reading material if you think there's something in current affairs that you might like to get your teeth into, if it's the sort of thing that you might like to spend a little bit more time getting familiar with. So I've got a couple of options here. The first one I'm going to pick up is actually not a hard copy because I lent my hard copy to somebody a couple of years ago and I never got it back, which is often maybe the sign of a good book. But it's One Spin on the Merry-Go-Round by Sean Duignan. Sean, you might remember best as an old RTE news reader. He used to be a reader of the 6-1 News, but also for a couple of years, he took time away from that job to be Albert Reynolds' press secretary when Albert was Taoiseach between 1992 and 1994. And the book is really good because it is basically Sean Duignan's diaries from all of that time. It's almost like the Irish equivalent to the Alistair Campbell diaries that you might know, which would also make a very good read, by the way. But it's a really insightful time in what's going on in Irish politics because you have the seeds being sown of the peace process, you have European treaties, you have the X case, you have a lot of question marks over social direction and stuff. And it's really interesting to see, particularly with the perception of somebody who works in the media in 2022, almost how slow paced it was 30 years ago, but it's a really, really good insight into the nitty gritty of how unglamorous life actually is inside the bubble of being in the Taoiseach's office. So it's a really, really good read. Very difficult to get hold of in shops as well. So your libraries might be the best place for you to get it. A second one is slightly more off kilter, considering that you might think it's current affairs books. It's David Van Breybroek, and it's an argument about not having elections. It's a case for democracy, but against elections. David's overall thesis is that you sort of have to be a little bit of a sociopath to think that you are worthy of putting yourself forward for public office, which means that by definition, anyone who wants a job in public office probably should be disqualified from it already. So David has a few arguments for how you can actually have decision making, which is still democratic, but without ever having elections, because he reckons that there's something sort of fundamentally unlikable about them, which is an interesting idea and one which obviously isn't going to get a very hospitable audience in a lot of places. But I have interviewed him for radio before, and he does make the case very well. So that's David Van Breybroek against elections. That is another one. I probably couldn't go much further without at least giving a plug to my partner in chief at Virgin Media News. You almost certainly have heard or read something about what Richard has written in A State of Emergency. I've written a book myself in the past. I'm not even going to recommend it because I certainly don't think it should be in anyone's top 5. But I know how much work goes into trying to pull together a book like this. Richard literally only started writing the book at the end of last January and had the whole thing written by October. And when you think about everything that was going on in COVID and how much time we had to spend doing our day jobs reporting on it in the last 12 months, the fact that he was able to take the time to squeeze out a really insightful, really colorful, really well-informed, really emotive, really evocative, but also just a very revealing book where you get to understand a lot more about the way in which the country responded because of the relationships, strained as they may be, between some of those who are responsible for making decisions, and all the while how those strained relationships then impact on the ground in nursing homes and everywhere else, and in hospital emergency departments. So fabulous book. You almost certainly have it on your bedside stand or have already read it already. But if you haven't, don't let the fact that we might all have COVID fatigue put you off, because it is absolutely very much worth the read of. This is going back a little bit again. This is of a similar generation to the Sean Duignan book. This is The Naked Politician. Your TD will never seem quite the same way again, by Katie Hannon. You will now know Katie from her work in RTE, presenting Late Debate and Saturday View and the likes. Katie wrote this book back when she was still a full-time print reporter. And it, I think possibly to date, is still the best little look under the bonnet at just how colourful, challenging, the little nuances of life inside Leinster House, but also just what it's like to be a TD. And bear in mind, again, this is written before the social media era, but the constraints on a TD's time, the amount of time that they have available for their family and the sacrifices that they make, but also maybe what why they actually do it, why they think that they're great lads all together. So it's a really, really insightful book. I only picked it up myself about a year or two ago, but I really, really enjoyed it, and I'd only aspire to write something just as well informed for the internet age. But this is brilliant. The Naked Politician by Katie Hannon. Again, hard to get in bookshops, so your library catalogue might be the best place for it. And then the other one that just popped up on my bookshelf that I thought was worth recommending, and I know that you might think that you might not want to revisit everything that went on in the United States in the last 5 and a bit years. Shattered by Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnes is a really good summary of life inside the Hillary Clinton campaign, where they clearly started out in 2016 thinking that she would walk the Democratic primaries, that she would walk the general election, and how it all just came a little bit unfurled along the way. This book takes also a slightly unusual approach in that the authors are very open and very transparent in admitting that a lot of the details in the book are not their own original reporting. In fact, there are enormous footnotes. There's pages and pages and pages and pages and pages of footnotes at the back, which show all the other contemporary reporting that they're citing. And you might think that's a little bit lazy, that they've just pulled together a book based on a lot of other people's work, but it means that the insight that they've got into how the whole thing was built and how the whole thing fell apart amid the challenge of Bernie Sanders, the challenge of Donald Trump, the Access Hollywood tapes, but also the hacking of the DNC emails and everything else. It's really, really insightful. And I think if you have any interest at all in US stuff, you might be more piqued by Bob Woodward's writing on the Trump White House and on the Michael Wolff books, which are both very good as well and definitely worth reading. But if you want to just go back to how it all could have been different, Shattered is a really good insight. There's a couple of other bits that I didn't mention. I haven't mentioned anything about British politics, either of Tim Shipman's books about the Brexit referendum or the general election that followed are really good. Tom McTague as well, Betting the House, the story of the 2017 general election. Really, really excellent stuff. There are loads of options. I mean, I could even plug End of the Road, 9 Days, the Top of the Teashop by Gavan Reilly, about the scandal that took down Enda Kenny. But you probably already have more than enough reading material. So I hope that this gives you just some food for thought, maybe just inspires you a little bit about what you might like to read. I do enjoy the Ireland Reads programme. And again, thank you very much to Meath County Library for asking me to do this.